So this is a podcast about biotechnology in India, and we'll try and talk to a bunch of people who are in this field to get a sense of what it takes to be in this field and how you can do well in it. Today we'll be talking to Jagdish Chaturvedi, who is an ENT surgeon and an inventor of medical devices. Now his story is very interesting. So when he was training to be a doctor, as in training to specialize in ear, nose and throat surgery, he and his mentor noticed that there were a lot of people coming in to St. John's Medical Hospital, which is where they were at that time, with late-stage throat cancer. And it would be so much better if these were diagnosed earlier. Dr. Jagdish figured that this could be done with a relatively simple device. And he built this device and it worked. More than 200,000 people have been screened with that device to date. But the process of taking that device to market taught him what he did and didn't know, and we'll be talking about that. Since then, he has also contributed to many more devices. I think the number is about 18 now. And for his first device, which is the ENT device to inspect the throat, he was recognized as one of the innovators, 35 under 35 by MIT Technology Reviews in 2016. He's written a book, which we'll be discussing quite a bit. The book is called Inventing Medical Devices, A Perspective from India, which actually covers the entire process of making a medical device in India. We've started with Medtech, which is not like a traditional biotech field, but it's a nice combination of a multidisciplinary area where a lot of different people bring a lot of different kind of skills and value. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it.
I did my MBBS from Siddhartha Medical College in Tumkur.
Okay.
I did my ENT from St. John.
And after that, you were part of the Stanford Biodesign program.
Right. I tried to invent something during my ENT post-graduation. It didn't really work out very well. So sought to train and then got into this program called Stanford India Biodesign. Then went to Stanford, learned the process, came back to All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And then I've been implementing this program for the government and now privately for a company that I'm a part of.
So how long was the Stanford Biodesign program?
Well, the training is 1 year long. So I did it in 2012. And then we are tied to a bond with the government for another 2 years to use that knowledge and contribute in the government. So I ran the internship program for Stanford India Biodesign for the next year. And also our fellowship batch continued to develop it for another year. So overall, I think we spent about 2.5 years.
And when you came back to Bangalore, you actually implemented bits of the Stanford Biodesign program, but you also evolved a strategy of your own.
Yeah, I think, when I came to Bangalore and I'm a part of a startup company that's very outcome driven, industry sensitive, versus the Stanford program, which was Stanford Biodesign program was largely academic. So I think there it did not matter whether you did something right or wrong, you still learn at the end of the day. But here I think we needed to be a lot more grounded in getting our game right. So I think a lot of the biodesign core principles are still what we follow, but I think lacunae that are there in data, validation, verification with our doctors and our healthcare system, I think we've incorporated a lot of those.
Right. So you've written 2 books.
I have written 2 books, yes.
This is one of them.
The first
right?
book, yes.
This is the first book.
Yes.
Do you also have a sort of free book floating around?
Free book in the sense?
A free book about innovation in India? Is that also... Well, maybe no. I've just seen
this is the only one on innovation.
Well, I got this one for free from you.
Yeah, so this is also freely floating in multiple places. But this is a book that was, encouraged by my boss to write. He said that don't wait for some successes to put it down. There is such little information on Medtech in India that whatever failures and challenges, put it down in a book. And that's where this came from.
Well, actually, I've read this book twice, which is very rare for any book. And the reason why I read this twice was it was so relevant for working in India.
Yeah,
not just
practical. Yeah.
Not just about medical devices or how to make medical devices, but just making anything in India. And if you're starting from an idea to execution, to actually understanding your market and who's going to buy it and who's going to use it.
Yeah.
And all the pain points. I think you covered that very well in this book. Yes. So thank you. So, all right. So what exactly is Medtech?
See, Medtech, the way I understand it is medical device technology. And I think that's what people mean when you're talking about Medtech. It's generally not healthcare software or healthcare IT. I think usually that's called health tech or digitech. But, medtech basically means medical technology. So there's no reason why they should not be in the umbrella. But what I understand and from the community is medtech is usually device heavy on technology for medicine.
What about diagnostics?
Sure.
Like diagnostic devices come under?
Sure. Anything that's typically a device or it's hardware, it may have big data and all of those things in it. But I think generally devices is what I think falls under medtech.
And so it's a part of biotech in some way, or does it?
See, when you say biotech, and if I think of the field biotechnology, I'm already thinking about nano and microscopic and those kind of things. Even though bio means life and tech means technology, I think that they're not considered to be the same thing. They might come under the umbrella of healthcare technologies,
right? Where
healthcare could be information technology in health, medtech, biotech. I think when you say biotech, I think it is more microscopic.
So the reason I ask you that is also because the projection is that India is a huge market for medical devices.
Yes.
And there is a sort of size of that industry, which I guess is about 10 billion right now.
Yes.
And supposed to grow like almost 10x in the next 7 years.
True, those are the projections.
So I just want to know whether that's separate from the huge biotech boom that is also expected.
Sure. When you think of it, the Department of Biotechnology, which is the big government body that is funds medtech under that umbrella. So if you look at it from that sense, I think the biotech is a bigger umbrella, and medtech and all these other things come under it. From when you say the field biotechnology, it just talks to me about microscopic things.
All right. So what are the companies in this space, both in India and internationally?
So you have some few big players that you would have heard of, like the Johnson & Johnson and GE Healthcare, Medtronic, Covidien, and Boston Scientific and Baxter. These are probably the big players, who are there in the healthcare space. I'm sure there are more that I'm missing out. In India, these are the same companies that have their Indian counterparts who basically form the industry. But purely Indian companies who are doing medtech stuff are probably just startups right now. There are companies who are probably 8 or 10 years old at the max. There's Phoenix Medical in Chennai that's been around for a while, and now there's Forus Healthcare, and plus a bunch of these startups that came out from the Stanford India Biodesign program. And there are a few more. I'm not getting all their names.
Right. So, so I wanted to ask you about InAccel, right? Which is where you are.
Yes.
Which is more of an incubator type space. Is it a space that people come with their idea and do you fund them?
So it started off like that, and now we are not that anymore.
Okay.
So when we were starting InAccel, we thought that we would be an accelerator for people who want to form meaningful products in healthcare and take them forward, but provide them the entire clinical grounding, the technology grounding, and the business grounding. What we didn't realize was that there were not good quality teams and companies coming up for us to accelerate, and which made us do the groundwork ourselves. So we ended up hiring people, we ended up inventing with them, we ended up spending time in the hospital, we ended up doing everything, hands-on. And later on became a point that when we are doing everything ourselves, doesn't really make sense to then take a piece of that same pie, in terms of what an acceleration is. So we now have become a purely medical devices company.
Okay.
So I think about a year and a half back, we changed that from the core of our practices. And we thought that the accelerator model is not the right time for India right now. So now we're a medical devices company like anyone else.
Okay. And who are you funded by?
So there's a friends and family round funding and a few individual investors who are basically funded, and largely the founders' money right now.
Okay.
So we have developed now, we've got 5 technologies under our umbrella, and these technologies are all about to hit market. A couple of them are already commercialized and a few are just about to be commercialized. So our strategy is to get them into the market for a year and a half, demonstrate a bit of the market penetration, do the early training and adoption, and then look for an exit.
I see. So you're not going to take in money. So is that because there are no mature investors in this space, or Like, why did you have to invest your own money?
So I think there's a lot of industry that we can collaborate with. So so what we are always focused on is what's the fastest way to get the product to the patient. That's always been there on our top priority. And if you see the biodesign process and all the processes that we are following, is to really cut short a 7-year process into 2.5 years, which we've been able to do consistently for these 3 or 4 devices. So now if we have to develop our entire manufacturing capability, put in that corpus, and then run that as a machinery, it is just going to delay a lot of these technologies to reach. So we outsource contract manufacturing and then look at bigger partners who have that distribution network out there and look for an exit so that it can reach the patients faster.
Okay, so by exit you mean that you will sell off
the license to a
so you license
the technology out.
And the kind of patents that you have right now, are they in India specific?
We've filed for Indian patents for all of our products, and then we also file for something called as a PCT that allows us to file in about over 130 countries across the globe. And for 1 or 2 technologies, we have applied for a US patent because that has a US market.
How expensive is that?
To give you a ballpark, in Indian rupees, I think for that licensing and consulting with a lawyer, it came up to close to 50-60 lakhs. For the US patent. No, for this one product.
For one product?
For the US patent filing. Okay. Indian patent filings are fairly cheaper. I mean, if you just have to file an Indian patent with a PCT, a budget of 3 to 5 lakhs should be good enough.
Okay. For each product?
Yeah. For each product. General basic filing as an individual, you could do it all on your own with a digital signature for less than 10,000 rupees. But if you want to get a law firm involved, in general, drafting and submission takes anywhere close to 60,000 to a lakh.
Do you recommend that you should get a law firm involved? Like, what are the problems that you've had in that process?
See, even when a law firm is involved, they'll make you do most of the things, but at least you'll know what you need to do and incorporate. Especially for things like patents, we're not very hassled by it because in India, the patenting and the approval processes take so long. You'll pretty much be done with your market by the time you even get the patent. Like I filed my first patent in 2010 and I still haven't had it granted yet. Right? It's 2017. So we file patents because it gives us priority, it gives us a date and a name to the inventors and all of that. And most large companies, when they want to deal with you, they would like some paperwork in place to be able to be discussing with you. US patents take much faster. Like we've already got a patent that we filed just 2 years back in the US for one of our technologies because the licensing of patents is a much more established market there. So here I think I recommend people to file a patent just so that you have your name and priority attached so that if you want to file in other countries, this national filing helps.
Okay.
It's mainly for that.
What kind of people do you hire? Like, what does your team consist of?
So, including doctors, we try to get a full-time doctor, but usually that's not possible. But we have doctors who collaborate with us, not at the level of just giving feedback. They are involved more closely with the R&D. But our core team is always going to be an engineer and a product designer, or a combination of those. So there would be either electronic or mechanical engineers with product designers or industrial designers. And these are the ones who form the core development team. Now with them, they could also be biomedical scientists, biomedical engineers, and sometimes business people from business background.
So if someone wants to go into Medtech, what should their background or skill set be?
Medtech is cross-disciplinary. So I think anyone who from the engineering background and anyone from biomedical or medical electronics or a biomed engineer or a PhD or a scientist who is in these fields or doctors or paramedical people could be good people to work in the Medtech.
Sure, but for example, a PhD like me would be a good to have on the team.
Yes.
But you could work without that.
Depends
so it probably won't pay me very much.
No, depends on what you're working on. Like for example, I've worked closely with a biomedical scientist who was on my team in the fellowship. He was a PhD in drug delivery systems. So when we were developing a technology for a liver biopsy device that delivers a hemostatic agent into the liver, we couldn't have done that without him because he's a drug delivery expert. So it depends on what core technology that you have in your device and many times you require an expert or a PhD or scientist in that.
Sure, but you need to be an expert in that particular thing.
Yes.
So it is not truly cross-disciplinary in the sense that you can't take anyone and ask them to learn something. You already expect some level of domain knowledge.
True.
Alright, so it requires a particular set of people to come together to
many times what we look at is the basic graduation level. Like for example, this scientist that I work with, Dr. Jonathan Pillai, is a biomed engineer first and then did his PhD in drug delivery. So he's a biomed engineer from his core basics. So we don't always need him to be involved in a drug delivery project. He was involved in other concepts which are purely mechanical as well because the core principles are the same. But when drug delivery comes in, he becomes a little more important to continue working with.
Right. And what is the pay scale like?
So to give you a reference, when I was with the government, biomedical scientists were paid somewhere between 60 to 80,000 rupees a month. And when you move into a startup, we have a biomed engineer who's working with us, probably with a lakh to lakh and a half per month kind of salary. So that's kind of the ballpark for startups. But if you're working for a larger company, that could easily be well over 2 or 3 lakhs a month.
But if you're a biomedical engineer, but what if you are somebody who's a domain expert but not always required in the team? Or you are a BSc microbiology, or you're required for a particular project. But
yes. I would then think even with large companies, I would think the range would be anywhere between 50 to a lakh, 3,000 rupees to a lakh.
For a bachelor's in science person.
For a big company,
Okay. But I mean, graduates are settling for a lot less. Engineering engineers are settling for something like 9,000 rupees.
I know.
Salary.
That's why engineers now prefer startups or Medtech. See, I think in today's day and age, I don't think there's anyone whom we work with who we pay less than 25 to 30,000. Even if we get interns who are still doing their course and they're just working with us for their class projects, get paid at least a minimum of 25 to 30,000 a month. So with that reference, most of the people who have 1 or 2 years of experience who are trying to do something in this space, anywhere between 50,000 to a lakh per month is kind of where it goes based on their experience and what they're trying to bring. So that's a reference ballpark.
So you said that when you were running InAxel in the sort of incubator, accelerator type mode, you didn't find the right teams or people with the right skill set. What was the skill deficit?
It wasn't the skill deficit, it was a mindset deficit. So we wanted to work with people who either said that we don't have an idea, but we want to work in a particular space in a formal way, or they would be locked to an idea so strongly that they wouldn't be comfortable moving from it. Because see, our job is to validate the basic concepts and ideas very early. And if someone says that no, I met this doctor and I want to just make this, and they are not open to being validated, then that's just a core mindset issue. So most of the people that we saw were coming to us that here's what I'm going to make, this is what I'm passionate about, you fund us and help us go through this process, and we'll do our research with them and we'll say, boss, what you're working on, there is no need for it, it's not going to sustain, because that's what we found out, and we need to work together in this area to see what is it that can be more meaningful to do. And if you're willing to be flexible, then why not? So what we ended up doing is we ended up hiring fresh people, and then we started giving them focus areas and then had them identify the areas of importance right from scratch. So we basically needed clear minds who were open to do things. And you don't find that in Medtech. People always have an idea that they're married to, and then they're just going fundraising. That's typically what happens.
Right. But that seems to be a general problem in multiple spaces.
In multiple spaces, that's true.
Right. How many jobs do you think that the medtech space actually has?
So I would think that there are about 100 to 150 startup companies in India purely in medtech. I'm not counting the app companies and the healthcare IT companies. Pure medical devices, I think at least there might be around 150 startup companies, and each company is growing as it's getting funded from the government and private funding. And they're growing at a rate of at least 5 to 10 people every year. So with that, I think it's a very small number right now, but I think startups are going to boom with all the entrepreneurial, teaching happening very early. So I'm a faculty in multiple engineering colleges, and I've come across courses where students are expected to form a company and raise first round of funding before they clear. So I think the entrepreneurial, elements are being grained very early, and all of these guys, maybe 5 or 6 years down the road, will not want to get placed in a big company, will want to form their own companies. So exponentially, I think there could be millions of jobs that could come out from the Indian medtech system alone. Not right away, but maybe in the next 5 years.
What did the Stanford Biodesign program not teach you?
Okay. What did it not teach me?
Like, you described some of that in the book. Why you had to change, the model of evaluating ideas.
Yeah. The Stanford India Biodesign model, the course didn't really teach us how to sell and sustain in India. It wasn't a very India-specific program. It's a global program. And most of their learnings and experience are Americanized. So when we go there, we are learning about insurance, we are learning about codes, we are learning about FDA, 510K, IDE. But when you come to India, there is the Drug Controller General of India, and then there are 14 devices listed under it, and there's no regulatory rules. And you have now GST and taxes and company and all of that. It's totally different. The practical aspects of it. What we learned from the program was the core principles of how you invent. But what we had to learn on our own is how to do that in India. How to work around stakeholders, how to work around corruption, how to work around, the things between the lines, and how to get things moving in India in terms of development, marketing, contract, sales, all of that.
All right, so you had to redevelop the program on your own.
Yeah, so if you look at
the principles.
If you look at the program that we do now using the biodesign process, I think a lot of the things that we ingrain are understanding stakeholders closely. So if our fellows, when they are doing their needs assessment, they talk to anyone from the healthcare domain to the purchase department, to rural areas, to urban areas, to health workers, to all of that, so that they are plugged in the system while they are thinking of their ideas. And also the lacuna of data. We have no data. We assume half the things, and the assumptions are based on assumptions. That's the most scariest part. The core data is lacking, especially when you're in the healthcare space. When you want to know actual incidence and prevalence, you might get it for a few big hospitals, but you won't get a national level data. So, and if you extrapolate US and American data, that's very skewed, ratios. So what we do is we interview a lot of doctors, not asking them about what their problems are or what the feedback on the device is. We interview and survey a huge volume of doctors, asking them, how many of these kind of patients do you see per day, per week, per month? How are they treated? And we try to then extrapolate that with literature and get a good sense of what the actual market size is. And I think that is a big element of our changes that we've made, is when we are filtering these needs. The filtering is based on magnitudes of the diseases that we have got to know from huge surveys, attending conferences, documenting all of that.
What about the manufacturing process in India? Do we have the capacity for precision manufacturing?
Yeah, we do, but not in all areas. Like, for example, disposable devices has a very rich manufacturing in India, because we make a lot of these catheters, tubes and all of that. Stainless steel components, surgical instruments are fairly well made in India, especially around Ahmedabad and Chennai area. A lot of our contract manufacturers are from there. What we lack are specialized tools that we need to make. Either they are very large equipment, or they require radiation, or they are balloon, like, for example, we have a product that uses a balloon. We don't have an Indian manufacturer, because anything that requires a lot of human involvement in its testing and development is not really well established, because the guys who can do this are working abroad for other companies, right? Whatever can be machined can be done really well in India and China, and can be done with very good precision and quality. But wherever the human intervention comes in for either testing or doing certain steps, it's all there in the Europe and America.
I see. You trained as an ENT surgeon.
Yes.
Well, I know that you still get to practice because I'm in your clinic right now. What have been the opportunity costs?
So, because I am a surgeon and also inventing and now also writing books, it's very hard for me to be tied to anything. So what I need to give up is the most secure standard job that everyone seeks. If I go into a big hospital and become a permanent employee, go down that associate assistant prof route, doing any of this would be a nightmare. And it just won't happen. I'll probably suffocate. Even though that's a great system when you're working as an organization, you have to follow the rules. But if there is someone who likes to do multiple things very haphazardly, it affects a lot of people around you. And I'm just not that kind of guy. So I chose to be on my own. So I run private clinics, private practice, working with companies, teams, advisory boards all over the place. So it just gives me utmost flexibility at the cost of security. So I could be jobless just tomorrow. But my profession of being a doctor kind of helps me because, doctor, you can always open your own private clinic and you can at least sustain and survive as that. Right. But otherwise, apart from that, for innovations and all of that, I just work with multiple teams.
You're one of the MIT under 35.
35 under 35.
35 under 35.
In 2016. Yes.
Yeah, and that's I think probably the first time that I heard about your ENT device. Okay. That's a mobile phone device that can be used in rural India.
Yes, it's being used today.
Okay, it's being used.
Yes.
Right. So what was that experience like to be recognized?
Oh, that was great. And I think the recognition comes when your product starts going into the market and the impact starts to be shown, right? I started working on that device in 2009 when I was a postgraduate student in ENT, where it looked like a failed project because I didn't really know how to make a product that sustains. But then getting the biodesign training, coming back, working closely with the design firm and then the company that licensed it out, we were able to, over a period of time, redesign the product for its kind of usage that would be impactful. And I think when it started crossing 200, 300,000 patients, it became a case study. It came under the notice of a lot of people. And then that becomes a success story. And then that gets recognized as impact. And that's how MIT thing happened. So it's a great thing to see your own product that you started off looked like it would fail and suddenly it's like a kid, right? Not doing well in school and then suddenly becomes a doctor, right? So I think guess what my parents are facing right now, but that's what it is like. Your product has its own life, own character and own things. So it feels great.
So there are a lot of kids in India who are sort of just out of school and who want to do Medtech.
Yes.
Because they see the need, they think they can do something, and that sort of gets squished by the time they come out of college.
Yes.
Do you have something to say about that?
Yeah, I think they just get excited and disappointed very soon. I think for Medtech, what I'm trying to do is really set the expectations that this is first of all not an individual person's game. Not only in Medtech, I think when you want to invent anything, doing something alone is always going to be faster, easier, but it's not going to be sustainable. Because somewhere down the road, you'll need other people being involved. And how long can you keep paying them? You need them to be a part of your team. So I think integrating the team early is, I think, the biggest lacuna that we are having today. And if people start working in teams cross-disciplinary very early on, the chances of what they do becoming successful is going to be a lot higher. Because when you're a team, even if one is working less, one is working more, one is bringing other skills, and everyone's passionate about it, the chance of at least two of them to continue it as a company and take it all the way is much higher. And we have seen that happen. I've been a part of about 18 inventions, but at least I can see 7 of them seeing the light of day. But many failed, and they've all brought learnings. Many of them are written in this book. But they're all usually because of team issues. Not so much because of the technology or the ability. Most of them are usually either the team breaks or the team had a different understanding of things. Because, if you don't have someone taking ownership, then it's just not going to move. It's a very basic thing. So that's what I would tell these young guys, is that keep their expectations. 2.5, 3 years of their life have to be parked with a good team of 3 or 4 people from different teams. And then that has to be taken with that spirit. If they say that, I've got a great idea and nobody's supporting and nobody's paying for my idea, then they are starting off with a very unrealistic expectation. Because nobody buys and sells ideas here. You buy and sell products. Reminds me of a funny conversation I had with a doctor once from Kashmir. He called me and said, Doctor Saab, aap inventor hai na? I said, yeah. Mere paas idea hai, aap kitna doge? So I bola, idea to batao. Main batata hu. So like, if I tell the idea, you will steal it. So then how will I put a number to it? He's like, no, you tell me how much you will buy my idea for. And that was 5 minutes of useless conversation on the idea network about ideas. And that was his thinking. It's like, I have a great idea. Someone is just going to buy it for crores of rupees and then they're going to be rich. And I did my job by giving an idea. which according to him nobody else could have thought of. So it's just the expectations and awareness is very, very primitive. So that has to change.
All right. I think we are sort of done here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. It was great being a part of this and look forward to how this turns out as a product.
We'll see.